not have it.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Thursday, November 9th meeting of the State Transportation Commission to order. I'm Mike Hayes. I'm the Vice Chair of the Commission, serving as Chairman until a new Chairman is appointed. Welcome, everyone. Happy to see all their smiling faces on a beautiful, sunny My Michigan day. We have a new commissioner that I'd like to introduce, Suzanne Schultz from the Grand Rapids area. Suzanne, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, thank you. So I'm Suzanne Schultz. I have both public and private sector experience. My background goes from originally being in the private sector, working for a transportation engineering firm doing environmental impact statement work and traffic studies, and as well as just general data, community master plans, zoning ordinances, so land use and transportation combination. I was with the city of Grand Rapids for 20 years, involved with their Vital Streets program, so the Sustainable Streets Task Force. So we dealt with transportation funding in Grand Rapids when Grand Rapids had no general operating fund money to match dollars to be able to improve its streets. And so we solved that problem, and then came up with Vital Streets, which is complete streets plus green infrastructure, and then influenced the design of dozens of city streets in the city. And now I'm working for Progressive AE as the urban planning and practice leader to design both streets and community master plans, corridor plans, things like that. So I've also served as the Complete Streets Advisory Council Chair for 6 years when we had Complete Streets, so it's kind of back full circle with Complete Streets on the agenda today. So thank you for having me.
Well, welcome, Suzanne. Sounds like you'll bring a lot of insight to the commission and as we try to take care of the needs of the people of the state of Michigan. So thank you and welcome. Okay, let me proceed directly to Commissioner Wyfrick, who will give us his director's report.
Good morning, commissioners. Good morning, everyone. My presentation today is kind of very informational. We have a lot of new players, relatively new players on our commission. And it's just kind of an overview of the department and all the many, many functions that we provide and roles that we provide. So, not only do we have a strong central core in Lansing, which is obviously our headquarters, where a lot of the policy and procedural and administrative roles take place, but we are a very decentralized entity when it comes to how we actually operate, how we actually deliver. As you can see, we have 7 different regions throughout the state. Within each one of these regions, there are multiple transportation service centers, TSCs. You'll hear us say the Mount Pleasant TSC or the Marshall TSC. Those were 2 that I worked at, by the way. And I used to answer the phone, Mount Pleasant TSC, and people were like, they thought they were calling Tractor Supply. So no, Transportation Service Center. That was probably 25 years ago when we rolled out the service centers. The intention at that time was to have a facility pretty much within an hour's drive of anyone in the state. That's really the front door for most of our customers, most of our citizens that we serve. That really is the front door. So in those service centers is where we have staff dedicated to project development and helping with the 5-year plan and managing design, putting those projects out to construction. We have our technical staff there as well. Operationally, we have permitting staff and some traffic safety operations staff, as well as maintenance is managed out of those facilities as well. And I'll get to maintenance a little bit later, but we are a fairly decentralized entity, like I said, when it comes to actual delivery of our program. I know you guys can't see all this. There's a version, I think, that might be even tough to see in what you have. Maybe we can get you a blown up version, but this is our org chart. This is on our website as well. It is our leadership team. As the director, you know, including human resources and gov affairs and communications. We have our 3 chief level folks that I believe most of you may know. And Greg Brunner is our COO and chief engineer. Terry Slaughter, Terry's not here today, but she is our chief culture, equity, and inclusion officer. And Laura Mester, who's not here, is our chief administrative officer. And you can see kind of how all the functions are really broken out there. Terry, as culture, equity, and inclusion, really has that focus on planning and organizational development. Whereas Laura, as administrative, is much more the finance and administration, and a lot of the modes fall under her as well. And then Greg gets the fun job, in my opinion, of trying to make sure that the department delivers on its works from an operational perspective across the state. He's the one that kind of oversees the leaders in each one of those regions. So, you know, we recently did a modification to our mission statement. Whereas before we talked about providing the highest quality integrated transportation system for economics and quality of life. So we know economy is a big deal. It's one of our primary missions. Our new mission statement is serving, connecting people, communities, and the economy through transportation. So economics and our role in that is front and center. A few stats there. I didn't know this. I probably knew it about 10 years ago. But you think of all the trade that happens with the country of Canada and the United States, more than a third of that comes through our state. I think a quarter of it comes through Detroit. But as a whole, you know, 35%, it's a lot. There is hundreds of billions of dollars of freight that moves on our highways, on our rails, on our waterways. You know, trucking is obviously the biggest part of that as well. And when you talk about economics in Michigan, you can't not talk about travel and tourism. We want people to come to our state. If we want people to come to our state, we need good infrastructure. We need good roads and bridges in order for them to want to come here and want to come back. And again, we support all transportation. I think most people, you know, if you ask them what does MDOT do, they probably say we build roads and we fill potholes and we plow snow. That's probably what they think we do. But it's far more than that. And really, I hope people are seeing that we're becoming much more of an integrated transportation system. And that system's not going to function optimally unless we're able to kind of weave all of those together. So whether it's busing, whether it's aviation, whether it's non-motorized, these are all very important parts of the transportation system. Obviously, this is just another look at all of the pieces. But again, in order for us to be most effective, we need to make sure that these pieces are working together and providing, kind of those intermodal transfer areas, whether it's passenger transportation. We want somebody to be able to go from a plane or a train to a bus to be able to get to where they want to go, or to take their car to a non-motorized facility. The linkages are extremely important when it comes to implementing an effective transportation system. So we'll talk a little bit about all of them, but roads, fun fact, over 120,000 miles of roadway in our state. That's a lot. Almost 12,000 bridges. And this is an interesting one. I don't think that most people realize there's over 600 governmental entities that have jurisdiction on roads in the state of Michigan. That's a lot. That's a lot to coordinate. Obviously, we're one MDOT. We have the M routes, the US routes, the alphabet soup routes, including the business routes that run through towns as well. There is that one entity, the Transportation Asset Management Council. They've been here to present to the commission. I know a lot of their appointments come to the commission and whatnot. I actually served on that council for many years, and I really enjoyed it because, as far as I know, that was kind of the one place that you had the state DOT, county road commissions, and municipalities kind of all come together to talk about roads and really asset management, how we can work together and plan that work, again, to provide for the most efficient and effective implementation of our works. Again, this is just another look at the breakdown on the roadways. So we have routes that are called federal aid eligible. There is federal funding that comes to the state of Michigan, and I'll talk more about where that money comes from in a minute, and there's state funding. Certain routes, the higher volume routes, all of the MDOT routes are obviously federal aid eligible. And then a lot of the county primary system and the major streets in the municipalities. They're only 30% of all roads, but as you can see, they carry 90% of the commercial traffic. So really the backbone of the economy, and almost 90% of all traffic is on those roads. You will see in the bottom set of the picture here, the department has a relatively small piece of the overall mileage of the system. It's only 8% compared to 92% amongst the local agencies. But again, more than 70% of the commercial traffic, that's where the heavy trucks are, that's where the freight and the economy is moving, is a lot on the state system. And again, out of that little 8%, more than half of the traffic is on the state system. So this is a breakdown. Like I said, it's the M routes. Pick your favorite M route. Mine's M18 by my family's cottage. Whether it's a U.S. route 127 or 31 or Interstate 94, those are the roads that the trunk line system is made up of. You can see there 9,600 miles. I'm not going to read all the different stats. But yes, we also do maintain roadside parks on the non-freeways, and then rest areas and welcome centers on the freeways and interstates. We do kind of all things with those trunk lines, whether it's the planning through permitting and operations. A lot of the things that I talked about are done out at the TSC and managed centrally from a policy and procedure standpoint. It does say construction by low bid on there. That is our bread and butter. We are required to have competitive bids. We have many different contracting methods that we do, whether it's design, bid, build, where we design it, put it out for low bid. We do design, build, where we'll hire a team to do both design and building. But at the end of the day, there are some value components that we add into our bidding, but by and large, it's low bid. That's how we procure our work. I used to get asked this question all the time. How much of your work does MDOT do versus how much is done by consultants? And that's pretty much design and construction engineering is what we're able to consult out. I know there's a lot of planning functions and program things that we do as well. On the design side, by dollar, it's about 60%. So MDOT, we don't intend to staff to do all of our work in-house. That's not really efficient. One, with limited staff, we need to make sure all bases are covered. We do want to have some of that done in-house so that we maintain our core competency and our expertise. So I will say we work very closely with our consultant community, ACEC, American Council of Consulting Engineers, Engineering Consultants rather, is a group that we engage with a lot and have a good relationship with. Construction side, it's about the same. That number will vary year to year. Quite honestly, I thought it would be higher than that for this year just because of the big projects and big program that we have with Rebuilding Michigan. Maintenance. This is the snow plowing, the pothole filling, the tree trimming, and all the things that we do outside of projects to keep our roads in good shape and safe. We have, it says right there, 31 MDOT garages. So we have regions, we have transportation service centers, we also have garages around the state that have direct forces. But there's only 31 of those, 31 counties. The rest of the counties, we actually contract with the County Road Commission to do our maintenance. So it's not in every county that you have an MDOT truck. As you can see down in the southwest part of our state, it's very largely direct forces. How that evolved that way, I still don't know, but it did. The rest of the state has kind of a mix, but primarily outside of that southwest and central part of our state, we engage with the county road commissions in those individual areas. They end up plowing both our routes and theirs. The contracts, how many years does the county contract go for, Greg? 5, thank you. Every 5 years, we renegotiate the contract with them. It's essentially, it's supposed to be kind of a break-even contract. We'll pay costs. And the advantage to that is, now we don't have to have multiple garages serving the same geographic location. Whether a truck's driving down a county road or down a state highway, you and I that drive those roads, we probably don't care what color that truck is as long as somebody's taking care of the roads. So that's how how that works. We do have a couple of private contracts for maintenance, like it says here in the city of Pontiac. The lighting P3 was an interesting one I worked on years ago. The lights on the freeways in the city of Detroit, there were a lot of lights that didn't work, probably 10 plus years ago. We actually have entered into a contract with a private concessionaire that has very specific performance objectives for them to keep lights on. And when things happen, whether it's a light gets knocked down or a light goes out, they have very strict time frames in which they need to go and replace that. So it's amazing. We used to get a lot of complaints about lighting back in the day, and I don't think I've had heard a peep about lighting since we've gotten this contract in place. I-75, I think we've talked about here before, but there's a segment on that is a public-private partnership, P3, and the contractor did some financing. It was a design build, but they also did financing, and they're going to have a maintenance role in this as well. So by giving the contractor some skin in the game for maintenance, there could be some incentive for them to ensure that their work is as of high quality as possible. And I say that not as I think our contractors do a quality job all the time, and we ensure from our controls and our inspections that happens. But it's just another innovative way of contracting that, we'll see what the benefits that we can get out of that. Big bridges and borders. Hopefully everybody's aware of how we can get in and out of the state. 3 of those go into our neighbors into Canada and Ontario. Actually, the 4th being the Windsor Tunnel, which is actually owned by the cities of Windsor and Detroit. That's municipally owned. Whereas the Mackinac is the Mackinac Bridge Authority. They're kind of quasi under the department. They have their own commission, if you will, authority that meets. Blue Water, it's interesting how they're all just a little bit different. Blue Water kind of has a U.S. and a Canadian side. It's almost like that bridge is split down the middle as far as how that one's maintained. And then the Ambassador is obviously a privately owned bridge that straddles into 2 countries. It's actually very unique. I think there's only like one other one, and it's a tiny little bridge up in Maine or Vermont or someplace way up in the Northeast. Then, of course, the Gordie Howe International Bridge, which we love to talk about here. It's been exciting to be part of that and see that coming out of the ground. That is, since the Canadians are fronting the money, we have a crossing agreement that was developed with them. All of this work is their contract. It's a Canadian contract. We work with them to ensure that federal aid oversight for federal aid eligibility is maintained. And obviously, we're engaged with them to make sure that the quality of the work that they're providing, because parts of it will be MDOT's. The interchange on I-75 will be ours, but the actual operations of the bridge and the port of entry are all part of the concession that the Canadians hold the contract for. So we could probably talk for a whole hour on any one of those. Again, just some stats on non-motorized transportation. We do have the Transportation Alternative Programs, the TAP program. We also work with the DNR on some rec trail programs as well. But it is a important part of the transportation system that we have to take into consideration. And I know Amy's probably going to regale us with much more on complete streets and whatnot later on in the day. Transit is MDOT's role. We don't own and operate any transit providers. We're not CATA, we're not DDOT or SMART or the Rapid in Grand Rapids, but we do have an oversight role and do provide grant and operating assistance, the money that flows through the department to these different entities. We do have some safety and regulatory oversight of things like limousines and whatnot, but we are primarily, from a transit standpoint, really an oversight and administration and coordinator. Aviation, much the same, although there are 4 owned state airports. From what I understand, the history behind that is these were airports that were struggling a bit, and the state thought that there was value in maintaining them, so we've brought them under state control. But for the most part, you can see they're commercial airports, over 14, this is an old number right now in 2021. I'm kind of curious what that looks like now, honestly, because that was kind of still during COVID. So it'd be interesting to see what our passengers per year has gone up to. Again, more of the oversight, regulatory, safety, education components. From an aviation standpoint, big deals right now are PFAS. Don't ask me what the acronym stands for. We all have heard of PFAS, though. It's a big ingredient of the fire retardant that's used at airports. The runoff ends up where the runoff ends, so we're dealing with a lot of issues with a lot of airports on PFAS right now. And then UAS, the unmanned aerial system, drones, whatever you want to call these, is really an emerging topic right now. Not just flying it in your backyard and taking great pictures, but how can we actually employ these from a transportation perspective is getting a lot of attention right now. Marine transport, we do have an office, a Great Lakes Maritime office now. It's just kind of starting to get its footing as far as what its role will be. But as you see, kind of it's the operating assistance, it's the administration and oversight pieces as well. Mentions the new Sioux Lock project on there. I was fortunate enough to be up there a month or 2 ago to see how they're going. It's amazing the impact to our economy there would be if that lock went down. So we're actually building a twin right next to it. There's already a lock there. It's really old. It's rarely used. But now both of these locks will be able to handle the big freighters that go through there. That's Army Corps job. That's not an MDOT job, but we obviously provide some input and assistance. Rail as well. You'll see a lot of the same type of oversight and assistance. We do have 665 miles of state-owned rail as well. Work very closely not only with the Class 1 railroads, but also with Amtrak on passenger rail as well. I'm going to keep moving. So hopefully everybody can read this. This is, and the intent wasn't for you to read this. I think one of the intents was just to show you how complex the Michigan Transportation Fund revenues and distributions really are. I'm not even going to attempt to talk through this, but it essentially shows how we bring our monies in. Primarily, our monies for transportation are derived, actually, I'm just going to go right to the next slide, are from registration fees, title taxes, gasoline tax, and diesel fuel tax. That's the bread and butter. A little bit of the, there are some general fund, or it's not even general fund, it's the income tax money before it gets to the general fund, is provided to the MTF as well, and some of the marijuana taxes we're now getting. So you can see about what that revenue is per year and the federal aid pieces that come in as well. So this is for all transportation, not just MDOT, just so you know. Now we can break that down by what goes to the highways, what goes to the local roads. There's not a slide in here, but from the Michigan Transportation Fund, it's 39% goes to the trunk line, 39% goes to the County Road Association, to the counties, the county road commissions, and the remaining 22% goes to cities and villages. And there's formulas that describe exactly how much each agency gets, and they're pretty complicated, but it takes into account, things like, and check me on this, somebody, population and vehicle miles traveled, the types of vehicles. So there's a lot of local characteristics that are taken into account as far as how much gets distributed to each one of those entities. For federal aid, Act 51, you'll hear us talk about Act 51 a lot. I should probably back up on that. Act 51 of 1951 is what established the Michigan Transportation Fund. It's been amended 24 times probably, but it still is the vehicle for how we intake revenue and how we distribute it. Within that Act 51, it also says that federal aid is split 75-25. So MDOT takes on 75% of the federal monies that come to the state. We actually have a program with the local agencies. Depending on the year, it kind of fluctuates, but they are allowed to actually buy out some of their, we buy out their federal aid, and they get state aid in lieu of that. There's some nuances about that, but long story short, when you use federal aid, it comes with all the federal strings, all the things that we need to do to ensure federal aid eligibility. The locals often find that they would rather have more flexible state monies, so we do have a swap program that we can implement in years where we're able to match federal aid. This is just an example. I'm not going to read through a lot of these stats, but I know we run a version of this every year. It's just kind of a placemat to kind of give you an idea of what's going on in the department. You'll see in 2022 we had $3 billion invested. The economic impact I talked about earlier is not only of the freight and movement on our roads, but it's the construction itself has an economic impact that we can put by providing people work and all of the other ancillary companies and industries that are involved. I'm going to ask real quick, is there a version of this that will be updated for 2023 soon? Typically January. So let's remember for the next meeting to make sure they get a copy of the next year's version of this. All right, and then other resources. Obviously, we're very well connected from a communication standpoint. Facebook, Twitter, a lot of social media. We have a wonderful person named Jesse Ball that does a wonderful job for us on our social media as well, but do everything we can to be plugged in to our customers to hear what they say and to be able to respond. So I went through that probably as quickly as I could with new folks. This is really just a primer. Would be more than happy, any of our work areas would be more than happy to sit down with you whenever appropriate to have a deeper dive conversation. So with that, I will open it up to see if there are any questions from the commissioners.
Thank you, Director. Are there questions on the commission?
Or was it too
I've got a
much to
couple.
throw at?
I've got a couple.
Okay.
So, and I can understand why it wasn't mentioned in all this, but how are you feeling these days about the safety records that we have in Michigan on the roads? I know there for a couple of years, right, when we were having the commission meetings, we would show traffic deaths to date and that kind of thing. How are we tracking? How are you feeling about it?
That's a great question. And obviously, traffic safety is a huge part of our mission. I will tell you, for many years, through effective engineering, enforcement, education, working with entities like the Office of State Highway Planning, we were doing well. The numbers were coming down. Of late, over the last few years, unfortunately, the numbers are creeping up. When you talk about fatalities, we've been over 1,000 fatals per year for the last few years. It's 1,000 people, and that's just fatalities. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but the number of debilitating crashes as well, we call them Category A's, they're the catastrophic ones, are high as well. It's been, one other stat we heard the other day too is seatbelt use is going down in the state of Michigan. That one dumbfounds me more than anything. And it's hard to figure out a rhyme or reason as to why. But we've been heading in the wrong direction. I will say, we still report, I think it's weekly or bi-weekly, on the fatals on our system. This year, we're starting to see a downtick. So we're starting to make progress. I think the last I saw were about 20 fatalities less than we were at this time last year. So I think we're heading in a better direction, but we're still, obviously we want to get toward zero deaths. TZD is kind of a campaign. It's a national campaign. Is zero deaths possible? Hope so. But that really is where we want to shoot. And that it's an interesting thing because we talked about, okay, if we're having 1,000 fatals on our roadways every year, boy, what would really be a good goal to shoot for? And when you ask somebody like, oh, maybe you could cut that in half, that would be great. Or maybe we could get down to like 200, that would be great. And then you ask them, well, how many would be a good number for you and your family and friends? And the number goes to 0. So that is the goal, towards 0 deaths. To answer your question shortly, even though I answered it very longly, we were heading in the wrong direction, but the numbers I've seen lately is we're starting to make some good traction.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, Suzanne?
I have 2 questions. The first one's about staffing. We're hitting that curve with attrition and retirement.
It's like musical chairs. We're kind of just trading talent around. We need to grow the pool. Workforce development is a big deal at the department. We have an Office of Organizational Development that has many pipeline processes in place. We start with a youth development mentoring program where we try to get like high school age folks in to see what we do. We have a strong internship program for our technical and engineering folks to be able to come in the door, work with us while they're in school. And then we have a engineer development program right now as well, that once they get in the door, gives them about a year to be able to understand what all parts of the organization do and get up to speed so that they can hit the ground running, being an effective member of our team. That's been a very positive thing from an attraction standpoint. But the truth is, it's total numbers. They talk about surveyors. Surveyors is another industry. We're only graduating in the state of Michigan probably about 1/3 of the number of surveyors that we need. And as a lot of us get older and start moving out of the job market, there is a concern that we need to build that talent pipeline to take our jobs. Even before youth development mentoring, we do another thing called the TRACK program. And that is focused at like middle school, high school. We work with the educators themselves in the classrooms on modules that they can do that really promote that STEM work and engineering work. We cap it off with a bridge competition where they actually build these balsa wood bridges and break them, and it's a lot of fun actually. But the whole intent is to get folks exposed to what we do and hopefully in the pipeline. Another big piece that we do as well is our transportation diversity recruitment program. For the last 10 years, we've been going out to historical black universities and colleges and trying to bring people that otherwise wouldn't be exposed to MDOT, wouldn't be exposed to our work, to come in and work with us as interns. And hopefully we can keep them in the state sometimes. So lots of effort. It is an issue for all of us right now, though.
Great. The second question I had was you mentioned economic development, and certainly there's other state departments that are working on that as well. The MEDC has the Redevelopment Ready Communities Program, and they're working with local jurisdictions on how to do that. A lot of that's around placemaking, and there's a lot of routes that affect those small jurisdictions. And so I'm wondering how there's alignment with MDOT work and MEDC in those places, because a lot of it, what the street looks like, context matters,
Absolutely.
and how that affects the economic development of those communities. Those are all interrelated.
100% agreed. And yeah, we work closely with MEDC on a lot of things. Specific to your placemaking comment, I actually spoke at to a bunch of our development folks this week, and I talked about back when I was a project manager, we just started talking about things like context-sensitive design and then context-sensitive solutions. There's actually a commission policy on CSS, by the way, that rolled into complete streets. Now we have a complete streets policy. Amy will probably talk more about that as well. We're also working on an initiative called M2D2, Multimodal Development and Delivery. So, yeah, we understand it's not only the freight and economics, it's also how we play in the game from a placemaking perspective. When you look at the state highways that run through communities, one of our biggest challenges is the priorities and the trade-offs. And, historically, I'm going back to when I was in school and probably when I was a PM, it was about how many cars can I fit through here. I want level of service A. I don't want there to be any backups. Well, that comes at the cost of pedestrians, non-motorized transits, really space in that right-of-way when you only have so much space. I think we do a much better job of having the conversations with local agencies, local entities, looking at their planning, master planning, and whatnot to see how we can make that appropriate balance. That's probably the hardest part right now, is where is the balance? Is it all about cars anymore? No, it's not. We do need to look much more multimodal, and it has to be within context in a local agency. What one place wants isn't always exactly, there's no cookie cutter. We have to just make sure that at the project level, we're having that sort of engagement so that we can ensure the most positive outcomes.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Director, thank you very much. I think we don't do enough level setting for ourselves and our audience on just how complicated MDOT is. I know I get comments from my friends and neighbors about MDOT all the time, and it's just, if we have some of this data at our fingertips and you start telling people this is what we're really dealing with, they just say, oh, I thought it was just my favorite highway that I go up and down every day, and I forget that there's over 9,000 trunk line roads. And so anyway, it's good. It's great. Thank you.
I think we are pretty humble sometimes. We probably don't brag enough about the work that we do, and it is complex. Every job, I've had 10 different jobs in the department. I counted them up the other day. Every time I thought I knew everything the department did, well, guess what? I'm finding out more right now.
Well, you're doing exceedingly well, so thank you.
Thank
Greg.
you. Yep.
Okay, let's move on then into commission business. First item of business is we met on August 3rd, and the meeting minutes are in your packet. I would entertain a motion to approve, or questions or comments or concerns about the minutes. Okay, Commissioner Turner offered approval,
Support.
and Commissioner Welborn offered support. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Okay.
I'll abstain because I was.
Very good. Commissioner Schultz abstains because she wasn't part of that meeting, so it's hard to attest to him. We have next on the agenda is the meeting scheduled for 2024, right around the corner. That's page 18 in your packet. We have meetings proposed meeting scheduled of January 25th, April 18th, August 1st, and November 7th. Are there any comments or concerns about those meeting dates? We did have a conversation, a couple of key staff leadership and I, before we came in here, that we're about due for a decent meeting on the road, if you will. We haven't done that in a while. Early on in my 10-year tenure, we did Sault Ste. Marie, did a good look at the locks and so on. We did a field trip up to the Great Lakes Bay region and went through the under part of the Zilwaukee Bridge when they were repairing the bearings, which was just fascinating. And there have been numerous other kind of out of Lansing meetings, so we may do that. One might be an overnight. One of the things we can do is perhaps get out to dinner and get to know each other a little better and that kind of thing, so we can be more effective in what we do here as a commission. So I would entertain a motion to approve that schedule of meetings for 2024.
Move to approve.
Commissioner Schultz moved.
I support.
Commissioner Brown supports. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, yeah. That schedule is adopted. And next on the agenda, we have an opening on the Transportation Asset Management Council that Director Wyfrick commented on, which is a tremendous entity in Michigan that I think serves the people well. We have a motion to appoint Ryan Buck, Director of the Washtenaw Area Transportation Study, to be reappointed to that council. Is there any discussion on that? If not, I'd entertain a motion. I think I heard Commissioner Salisbury make that motion, and Commissioner Welborn support. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye.
I do have a question.
Yes.
Camera guys, look at me. Would it be possible to have a resume or any background provided when we do these reappointments?
Certainly, we can start to request that,
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner. Yep.
I think we have in the past, but we may be getting a little lax there, so yeah. All right. I could try to put this in perspective, but I think that Patrick McCarthy do a much better job. We do need to amend the 2020 Rebuilding Michigan Bond Resolution, and so I'll turn it over to Patrick to explain the why and the where of that.
Thank you, Chairman, Vice Chairman.
Whatever
Chairman
I am.
today.
Yes.
So a little bit of background back in 2020, January, the State Transportation Commission authorized the department to issue up to $3.5 billion of bonds for the Rebuilding Michigan program. That resolution was set to expire in December of 2023. To date, we have issued $2.8 billion towards the total of $3.5 billion. We have about $700 million left to issue. And so we are here today asking for an extension of the resolution to add another year so that we can continue with the projects and the scheduled financing of those projects. Our intent is to issue the remaining $700 million, but not until the end of next fall. At this point, we did not need the bond funds yet, and so we didn't want to issue them prematurely and pay interest on those bonds while we were waiting to continue work on the 46 projects in the list. I also would like to mention in the amendment, there's an updated schedule of the 49 projects that were originally authorized. It's the same list of projects. We just updated the budgets on each project to reflect current estimates.
Okay. Thank you, Patrick. Are there questions or comments? I think the members of the commission have been somewhat pre-briefed on this, so hopefully you've had a chance to fully understand it. I don't remember how many of us were here in 2020. This was an action that was not taken lightly by this commission, and with a lot of consideration and discussion, and felt real confident about it unanimously at the time. So this is just an amendment and I applaud the department for not just issuing bonds just for the sake of issuing bonds when it wasn't justified by the flow of work. So that's what this is really all about. And so are there any concerns, comments, questions? Okay, since it is a fairly significant action, I'd like to ask Troy to conduct a roll call vote. Oh, I'm sorry. First, we need a motion. Was that Heath? Is that okay? Commissioner Salisbury will make the motion. Looks like Commissioner Welborn will support.
I support, yes.
I'm going by red microphones here. So we have a motion and support. Troy, would you conduct a roll call vote?
Certainly. Chairman Hayes,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Schultz,
Yes.
Commissioner Salisbury,
Yes.
Commissioner Turner, Commissioner Welborn.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. Passed unanimously. And Patrick, thank you for your work on this and your pre-work. It's
Thank you.
very well done. Do you have something later in this program, Patrick, that, well, no, we'll bring you back up. You're young. You're young. The next item on the agenda is the 5-year transportation program that all of us received at the last meeting. Commissioner Schultz, you did not, but I think you received it ahead of time. So it's at this point in the process, it's time for the commission to approve this plan to then forward on to the legislature for their consideration. This is something that the commission does every year on a 5-year rotating basis, basically. And Michael, would you like to just give us a quick update on where we're at with this plan, what kind of feedback you've gotten, and so on?
Absolutely. So, good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Director, everyone. I'm Michael Case, MDOT's 5-year Transportation Program Specialist. And just as mentioned by the Chair, I'm going to give updates since the plan program was approved for distribution to the public and opening of public comment back in July. As noted in your agendas, this is an action item, so at the end, we'll be requesting your approval to finalize the document and submit it to the Michigan Legislature, State Budget Director, and fiscal agencies by March 1st of 2024. So I'm glad I included this slide because we've got new commissioners, and it's always good for the public to understand actually what's in the 5-year transportation program and what it covers. So as the director covered in his presentation, this is only covering the trunk line portion of the transportation network. So that's roads, bridges, our operations program, safety programs, and other state and federal programs such as transportation alternatives. Within the document, we're also covering revenue and investments in public transportation, so that's intercity bus, local transit, rail, and marine, and the Aeronautics program. We have some specific objectives within the 5-year transportation program. We report on progress for performance measures for all these areas. We're reporting on our estimates for available federal revenues or obligation authority and state revenue for the next 5 years. We're also trying to provide transparency and meaningful input opportunities to the public for the state trunk line system, and to have this serve as an internal and external resource for where MDOT is with the development and delivery of its program. The main requirement that we have with this is to provide the rolling list of highway construction projects over the next 5 years to the state legislature. So that is part of what we'll be fulfilling today with your approval. So a quick update since July. The investment numbers have went up slightly. I think we were at 15.6 billion for the total 5-year transportation program. Some shifts have occurred with the closing of fiscal year 23 and some projects into fiscal year 24. So currently we're at 15.86 billion with 11.15 billion in the highway program, 3.7 billion in public transportation, and 989 million in aeronautics. You see, we've got a breakdown of the broad categories of the highway program. For roads and bridges, we've got about, I think, almost a little over $8 billion over the next 5 years, with over $2 billion in fiscal year 24 alone. Routine maintenance, that's covering some non-capital projects, things like street sweeping, pothole filling, snow plowing. We're planning on $2.5 billion over the next 5 years, with $476 million in fiscal year 24. Safety and system operations, that's traffic signals, pavement markings. We've got $949 million over the next 5 years and $239 million in fiscal year 24. And for additional state and federally funded programs, again, that's transportation alternatives, recreational trails, rest areas, $547 million over the next 5 years and $111 million in fiscal year 24. So here we see the split between the preservation program and routine maintenance. Preservation is in the blocks with a red outline around it. That includes Governor Whitmer's Rebuilding Michigan program that we just went over, that Patrick presented. So the contribution of that to the total program is about $592.5 million. That's only until fiscal year 25. You can kind of see the obvious change here after 25. The program goes down to, I think, what we might agree are sort of some regular investment levels, but we'll see what happens with the bond program. For fiscal year 24 in the highway program, we're looking at $2.96 billion, with $1.3 billion in repairing and rebuilding roads, $558 million in repairing and rebuilding bridges. Just to full disclosure, that number actually includes a little bit more that's not actually an investment, it's just being reflected on paper for the Blue Water Bridge Plaza. Trunk line modernization, that's the I-94 modernization project at $260 million. Routine maintenance, out of that $2.5 billion, $476 million, $239 million for safety and system operations, and $111 million, again, for state and federally funded programs. Looking at the public transportation and aeronautics program, no changes since July. Still looking at $4.7 billion over the next 5 years, with $3.7 of that in public transportation for intercity bus, passenger rail, rail freight, ports, and local bus. You see the aeronautics programs here as well. Again, that's $989 million in fiscal year 24. I'm sorry, about $249 million in fiscal year 24 and $989 million over the next 5 years. So I mentioned here back in July your approval to post the document online and open up the public comment period was, I think, by all measures successful, as it has been in previous years. We have a number of methods to reach out to the public to inform them about the public comment opportunity, from our mobile site, desktop website for the 5-year transportation program. We do a lot of social media outreach as well and link back to the program, as well as something that is relatively new. It's a couple of years old now, but it's still pretty shiny. The Michigan Transportation Program portal, that's actually an interactive map that links directly to the 5-year transportation program page, and the public can at any time look at the map and where projects are located and comment on them directly. So it's a very easy way for people to understand what transportation projects on the trunk line system are being planned in their area and providing an opportunity for them to comment on it. Our results this year, we had 265 comments received. Social media engagement, we had a reach of over 150,000 people this year. That's general awareness, so people that saw all of the posts that we put out. Of those 150,000, 6,179 engaged with us in some way. That's a like, a share, or a comment. We always direct them to the 5-Year Transportation Program webpage, and we had 9,665 visits this year. That's a little bit down from last year, but we're still doing good. Some specific comments we received. You can see we've got them categorized here into some key engagement themes, as well as through the Michigan Transportation Program portal, the general categories of the kind of comments we received, whether they're safety-oriented, congestion, environmental. You can see that most of the comments are geared toward concerns about safety, followed by concerns about design as well. And that usually links to someone's concern about the current design of a project that's in their area. Most comments this year were project specific. There were a lot of non-project specific comments as well. That includes things like just general concerns about policy or plan, or asking for clarification about the way that MDOT delivers its program. Just a couple of quick specifics for you with some comments we received. We actually had 12 comments this year with concern over impacts on the I-75 construction on Plum Creek Bay and need for additional wetland mitigation for that project. 16 commenters expressed concern with the design and safety of the US 23 business route project from I-94 to M14. And 19 commenters expressed opposition to the US 131 from Wealthy Street to Pearl Street project in the Grand region. So all comments that we receive are acknowledged. We provide an option at the time of comment for people to say yes, they want us to provide a response to them, or no, they do not want a response. So all those that indicated yes, we work with the regions and the transportation service centers and the project managers on those projects to provide all the information that's being requested. And of course, at the end, we provide all the comments to the regions as well, given that this process provides a really great opportunity as the first time a lot of people are seeing these projects that are still in the planning phase to have some sort of influence or impact on their eventual design. So with that, back to the action item at hand, we're requesting your approval to post the finalized fiscal year 24 to 2028 5-year transportation program online, finalize it and submit it to the legislature, state budget director, and House and Senate fiscal agencies by March 1st, 2024. Upon your approval, we'll be making the necessary updates because we provide a print version of this document every year as well, and distributing that out to you and other people who would like a copy. You can always find more information on the 5-year program, given this is a very abbreviated version of what we put together each year at either the 5-year transportation program webpage, or you can find the projects mapped on the Michigan Transportation Program portal webpage as well. So with that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Michael. As always, great presentation. Appreciate it. Are there comments or concerns for Michael before we take action? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the draft 5-year plan to pass on to the legislature to take care of our step in the process. Commissioner Salisbury made a motion, and it looks like Commissioner Brown is about to second it.
Yes, I second.
Thank you. And other additional discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposition? Passed unanimously. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the Office of Commission Audit update from Jack Cotter. I've asked Jack also, you'll see him later in the agenda for the 6-month financial audit follow-up report. Just in the interest of time, I've asked him to do both at the same time while he's up there.
Good morning, everybody. Over the last year or so, I've shared a high-level view of the outputs that OCA provides. I've discussed hundreds of products that we issue regarding our thoughts on costs, contracts, proposals, MDOT practices and risks, internal controls, compliance, liaison relationships, and external auditors. Today, I'd like to spend a few minutes describing the nature of OCA's organizational structure. So OCA is comprised of 2 divisions. Each division has 2 sections. So both sections of the external audit division perform essentially the same types of projects. We try to balance the sections in terms of the number of entities and complexity. The balancing allows us to have both continuity that results in efficient activities year after year, and it allows challenges that result in professional growth of staff with, we hope, increased job satisfaction and fulfillment. The External Audit Division's main outputs are attestations about the costs reported by counties, municipalities, utilities, universities, transit agencies, and several other specialized types of entities who are to be paid for their costs for working for MDOT. The division reviews and attests to millions of costs every year for hundreds of entities. Importantly, OCA does not have a dog in the hunt as to the results of the engagements. OCA's efforts result in the identification of either overpayment or underpayment by MDOT. Costs are an objective concept that OCA aims to identify on behalf of all parties. The work products generated by the External Audit Division are the primary focus of OCA's peer review in other states, but by other states that review our work. OCA has always received passing grade on our peer reviews. So the Internal Audit Division, as opposed to the External Audit Division, also has 2 sections, and they have 2 very different types of tasks. The Internal Audit Services section are the folks who perform most of OCA's internal audit functions. They meet with MDOT employees after the Legislative Office of the Auditor General issues their audit reports. If MDOT believes they have fixed the reported problems, OCA performs some limited analysis and testing to determine whether the fixes are well designed and effectively functioning. Also, if and when management asks for a special analysis or studies about other MDOT procedures and practices, staff in this section do the legwork that allows us to answer the MDOT manager's questions or concerns. On occasion, OCA might identify other previously unidentified risks to MDOT's ability to meet its objectives, and these folks will roll up their sleeves and assess the significance and likelihood of the risk coming true. This section also has started work on a department-wide risk assessment, which serves to help identify and prioritize MDOT's risks. The other section is called the Vendor Services and Professional Practices section, and they are the folks that help ensure that MDOT pays only what is appropriate to the engineering consultants with whom MDOT contracts. Paying the right amounts to consultant vendors goes considerably beyond ensuring that the amount on a consultant's invoice matches the payment that needs to be made. While MDOT is responsible for negotiating the number of hours needed by the consultants to do the tasks that MDOT requires, the money side of things is generally not negotiable. Unlike construction costs, which are paid to the awarded construction company because they were the low bidder, as the director talked about before, consultants are selected based on QBS, which is the qualification-based selection. By federal law, the engineering consultants are not selected based on something like a low bid. MDOT pays the selected engineering consultant for the actual hours worked, and the engineers are limited to charging MDOT for, one, the actual direct labor hours based on the pay rates previously provided to my office by the consultants. Two, they get paid their indirect costs, which can pose a higher risk of overpayment by MDOT if the consultant misstates the associated indirect cost rate. And three, they get an 11% rate of profit on the sum of their direct labor and indirect costs. And last of all is four, they get other direct costs, such as the rental of a ground hole driller, something like that. Several years ago, the consultant industry, FHWA, and MDOT agreed that the consultant engineering firms who receive more than $500,000 from MDOT will provide MDOT with a CPA audited indirect cost rate. These CPA audits cover about 99% of MDOT's awards to pre-qualified consultants. That's a huge percentage. The section, so these folks in this section review the CPA working papers to help determine whether CPA firms follow professional auditing standards. In early days, we found considerable issues with some of the CPA firms, which was considered consistent with issues identified across the entire nation in the CPA industry. We feel that absent collusion, which is nearly impossible to become aware of without an inside informant, CPA firms are generally doing what is required. This section is a national leader in the topic of assessing the efforts by CPA firms, and two of our team members recently won a national award for their contributions to revising the related industry accounting and auditing guide. MDOT awarded the other 1% to smaller consultant engineering firms who self-attest to their indirect cost rates. The section visits the workplaces of those firms to assess their methods of determining their indirect cost rates, which often results in recommending considerable rate adjustments. The adjustments are generally because the consultant might have been a little over-aggressive or they lacked an understanding of the applicable federal requirements. We also provide advice on how to avoid the future adjustments. The section also provides OCA with a foundation for our successful peer reviews by reviewing selected OCA work products, professional research, and they provide IT assistance for some of the specialized software that I spoke of in the last commission meeting. I believe that the commission and MDOT and I are very fortunate to have access to these excellent staff in both divisions with whom I have the pleasure to work. So I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions that I can attempt to answer.
Any questions of our commission auditor, Jack Cotter? I'm just glad there are people with dispositions like yours, Jack, that can do that kind of work. It's so exceedingly important, but it's so tedious, I could never do it. So I highly respect you and your staff. Did you want to talk about this 6-month?
I sure will. Once again, it's good news. The Exhibit C is our 6-month financial review follow-up report on unresolved service contract reviews that were more than 120 days have passed since we issued the audit report. And again, the report indicates there were no such instances. So that's several years running of nothing coming to anybody's attention here. Thank you.
Again, testimony to the good hard work you guys put in and your patient diligence on it. So thank you, Jack.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
So we'll go into the oversight and overall informational reports, and we'll ask Patrick to come in again, and he's got to slug through a few of these things. So welcome back, Patrick.
Thank you. In your packet today, there are a few documents I'd like to discuss. The first one is a document that lists the quarterly bid letting summary, which is all of the MDOT let contracts for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 23, which is July through September. In the fourth quarter, there were 114 lettings. The second document in the packet, in my portion of the packet, is a section about the bid letting trends for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 23, as well as comparisons to 21 through 23. These document various trends in the bid letting process, including the number of projects let, the number of single bidders, and the number of all bids rejected, as well as payments to the contractors for that fourth quarter. And then lastly is a document that provides statistics about our procurement card transactions. These are transactions made with the department's credit cards. These are the fourth quarter statistics about the number and dollar amount of those transactions, as well as types of P-card transactions that we monitor throughout the year. Do you have any questions that I could answer?
Thank you, Patrick. Are there any questions? We get all of this information ahead of time, and hopefully everyone has a chance to go through them and see if there's any red flag concerns. But I'd open it up to any questions of Patrick this morning. Okay, if not,
Thank you.
thank you, Patrick. The quarterly bid justification summary and real estate services section, D. Parker.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Want to share with you, for me, it's on page 100 of 223, but starts basically our quarterly bid justification summary. Again, it's highlighting our bids as far as the status and updates on those. If you look at, for example, on page 101, you'll see the graph there. The blue line is the dollar amounts, which represents our benchmarks. These are the dollar amounts of program of our projects that we benchmark back in this case, September of 2022 of last year. And it's, of course, the orange lines are the dollars of the projects that were let each month. Again, going from October to September. And then the blue line, the gray line is also the line as far as our current program projects that we have to date. So as you notice, there is a difference there, I'll say, between the benchmark, the blue line, and the gray line. And some of that is definitely because we've had projects that may have moved out of the fiscal year, or moved out of that letting time frame. With regards to that, and it's for several reasons. It could be need additional time for real estate. It could be working with the local communities. Again, working together as far from a partnership standpoint with our project and maybe with a local agency project as well. Some of the reasons, of course, is cost. We've had a inflation, higher inflation, of course, as we've talked about before. So that's some of the discrepancies there, but we can definitely go into detail with anyone, again, who wants to know more information about that. I know that, again, this report is pulled from which is called SMART, which is a software program that MDOT utilized it actually stands for Statewide Monitoring and Reporting Tool, is what SMART stands for. Again, just a tool we use to basically monitor our projects, be able to pull spreadsheets up, pull data, pull information up in regards to our projects at any given time, again, for those program projects. Again, that's what SMART stands for. Also, again, just continue to look at page 101 there. Again, the con phase project, again, those are projects for construction, just that, as it says there. So, and actually this goes from page 101 to page 175, I believe it is. And during that, again, within those page limits, you'll also see reference to justifications for a lot of our projects. Any project that's over 10%, we have to provide a justification for. And that information is, of course, is in your packet as well in regards to those projects. And there's a summary as well within your packet for our projects. Again, page 113 as an example, which kind of outlines the justification reporting for different projects. Again, that was for the August letting, for example, was for that one right there. Going down, again, you have justification letters that are also within your packet, explaining the rationale, the reasons for the project. Either we accepted the bid, or if not, we rejected the bid as well. And that's, again, pages 100 through page 175.
Thank you, Dee. I've said it the last few meetings, but the graphic representation at the beginning of your comments is so much more helpful than what we used to kind of have in front of us, which was a whole lot of raw numbers that we couldn't quite decipher. So appreciate all your hard work on that. Any questions of Dee regarding his sections of the informational report?
And also the
Commissioner Schultz?
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the graphic on page 108 that has maintaining traffic restrictions, location, other things. Are there factors that you look at that you can anticipate where those situations might exist when you're setting those numbers? Just for my own education.
Yeah, it's tough because each project is different, of course, but we have some projects where we have to, from a maintaining traffic standpoint, we have to open we may be down to single lanes during the week, but come the weekends we have to take all barrels off the road and open it back up. For example, I-94. And so that traffic, maintaining traffic restrictions, their cost will be different. Again, based on the project versus single lane closures or double lane closures as well. But what we try to do, our project managers, they try to go through and look at each project case by case and try to get a handle on what those costs would be from a maintaining traffic standpoint. We have what we call like an average unit prices from bids from before that we try to use that as well to help us and guide us as well as far as trying to determine the costs for a lot of these projects. Again, looking at the percentage for the MOT for the construction of that project.
So they take that into account when they do their estimate before they get the bids in? Okay.
Yes.
All right, great, thank you.
We do our best to do that, yes.
Yeah, that's it. It's like
I'll say that.
Other questions of Dee? Okay, very good. Thank you, Dee. And then your the real estate services.
Yes, for information purposes, page 176. We're looking to dispose of a property, direct sales of excess property to the Tri-County area schools. Again, they purchased a break and limited access for construction of a driveway for the new elementary school. This is for informational purposes for you. The sale price, appraisal value is $5,000 to the Tri-County area schools there.
Thank you. These are reported to us as just informational, unless there's a concern around where it involves a commissioner or someone like at a policy level, then we would have a discussion about it, but otherwise these are just routine.
Yeah. We have a form that folks will fill out to make sure there's no conflict of interest as well regarding board member or state employee as well. So.
All right. Any questions of Dee on that? All right. I think you're off the hook. Jason, you're on the hook. Vinyl construction contracts.
Good afternoon, Commission. It is a beautiful day in Michigan, and I thank you for taking the time to be here. Just wanted to go over a few of the summary items from Exhibit B. The MDOT projects for July, August, and September. 50 projects totaling approximately $163 million were finalized. 2 projects were more than 10% over the original contract amount, and those will be presented at a future Exhibit B. 33 projects came in under the original contract amount for MDOT projects. Our finally monthly costs for those 3 months were respectively 1.07, 1.87, and 2.74 under the original contract value. Our fiscal year is averaging 0.5% over the original contract amount, and I think the table in there shows still a steady plus or minus 1%, very close to our original contract value, so we're trending well in that. The local agency projects for July, August, and September were 63 projects, totaling approximately $129 million. 4 projects were more than 10% over their original contract value, and 36 of their projects came in under the original contract amount. There are 5 projects for MDOT and 3 local agency projects in Exhibit B, and I will answer any questions on those or any other questions on the exhibit.
Any questions for Jason? Okay, very good.
Thank you.
you, sir. We took the Jack Cotter item there, so now we're going down to the presentation. Amy Matisoff, 2 kind of disparate topics here, but but Amy's involvement requires that she address them both. So the Tribal Affairs Program Annual Report, we always receive a report about this time of year about that. But then there's a desire to readdress, kind of update the Complete Streets policy, which I remember, again, back about 10 years when I was first on the commission, we adopted as a policy. So she'll tell us where we're at with that. So, Amy?
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm happy to be here today. So first I'll start off with the Tribal Affairs Annual Report. So I'm Amy Matisoff, the Strategic Alignment Outreach Specialist and Tribal Liaison, who wear many hats, so that's why you're hearing from me twice. So first I would just like to recognize that November is Native American Awareness Month. So jumping into our slides, I would just like to present a land acknowledgement statement for all of us. So these lands where we stand today are the ancestral territories of the Anishinaabe, who have lived in the state of Michigan from before recorded history to present day. The Saginaw, Swan Creek, and Black River bands ceded this place in a treaty to the United States in 1819. We acknowledge and honor this place, as well as the love and respect that the Anishinaabe people have shown for the land and waters that sustained their ancestors and continue to sustain us all today. The Anishinaabe people's commitment to this place should encourage all of us to be better stewards of the land we inhabit and the waters in which we depend. So I just wanted to put that out there. If you have any more interest in learning about that, please reach out. And so I'll move into kind of the foundations that are set for our Tribal Affairs program as well as our policy. So at a federal level, many components have led us to the place where we are today, including the U.S. Constitution, Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, Section 4F, various provisions in national environmental policies that are kind of included in NEPA, and lastly, highlighting that FHWA is the federal protector of tribal interests. So that's kind of where we get the drive down to from the federal level to moving into the state level. How does that interplay with my role? So the foundation for tribal relations and consultation at a state level was originally kind of set forward in the State of Michigan Accord in 2002. That has grown with every administration that has kind of come along currently to where we are today with this current administration. In 2019, Governor Whitmer signed Executive Directive 2019-17, which enhanced previous executive directives and led to an updated State Transportation Commission policy that was approved in July of 2020 by your predecessors. So kind of that sets the foundation. Again, if you have more questions on that, I'd be happy to answer those. Something I would like to highlight is this is the location of the 12 federally recognized tribes within the state of Michigan. These are their governmental centers where, most of their reservation land is probably located. But I would like to highlight that we have tribal representatives and tribal citizens that are across the state of Michigan. They don't just have to live in reservation area. And a lot of them actually, live in the urban centers just like most of us in, Grand Rapids, Metro Detroit. So these are the governmental centers of each of the tribal governments and their location. So first, I'd like to kind of highlight some of the consultative accomplishments that we've had kind of from a state or an MDOT level, department level. In February of 2023, MDOT staff participated in a panel discussion, Todd and I, thanks Todd, for conversations around infrastructure needs with the Michigan Infrastructure Office that was brought together by the Executive Office of the Governor, really focusing in on the needs of tribal nations. So that was a very productive conversation. Additionally, staff from the Superior region were able to participate in an FHWA-driven peer safety exchange on tribal transportation. And then lastly, I'd like to thank the director and all of MDOT's leadership team. While they were up in the Sioux visiting up there for one of their leadership gatherings, we were able to have the Sioux tribes, tribal chairman and staff present to our entire leadership team about the importance of the area and why our interactions with tribal nations are so important. So thank you to the director for helping with that. Statewide, I'd like to kind of note a couple accomplishments on here that go back to that FHWA as the supervening power of authority. From a Section 106 standpoint, in 2021-2022, the department in our environmental services section worked really hard to renegotiate and sign a programmatic agreement which dictates how we handle our Section 106 consultation. By way of having that MDOT, FHWA, and 50+ tribes within Michigan and the United States work together to make sure that we are being respectful in our work from a NEPA standpoint and a Section 106 standpoint. That resulted in 16 trunk line consultations and 54 local consultations. So we actually have 2 on-staff archaeologists who are handling that now, and I'm very proud of the work that has taken place in that area. Additionally, we're working with the Office of Highway Safety Planning to talk about vulnerable road users and what that means to tribal communities, because they're predominantly rurally located, which is very different than maybe what you would see in our metropolitan areas. So that is the highlight from a statewide standpoint. Additionally, very proud of the work that our regions and TSCs perform. We recently put up signage with the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians in Peshabi Town, letting people know that you're entering a tribal community, and that's very important for our tribal nations to get recognition of where they are today. It's not just a historical conversation. The Marshall TSC continues to work with the Nottawasepi Huron Band of the Potawatomi on proposed infrastructure improvements related to the Ford Blue Oval plant, so working with the Marshall TSC on that. And then we continue working with the Saginaw Chippewa Indian tribe to explore potential interfaces with US 127. These are just very brief highlights. You'll notice in the report that my actual report is about 50 pages. So across the department, the staff across the department have been great in helping pull this whole report together. I'm just one person that gets to talk to you. It's really the folks in all the regions, TSCs, and our different departments and offices that have helped put together this robust report. So quickly, I'd like to talk to you about where we're headed for 2024. So planned areas of focus, I'd like to kind of bring to your attention that again in 2024, we'll be planning the Interdepartmental Tribal Transportation Summit, which usually takes place with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Federal Highway Administration, MDOT staff, the 12 tribal nations within the state. And this year we're hoping to, if we can make it all work out, include folks from our metropolitan planning organizations as well. After that, I have a next slide that's going to talk a little bit about the updates to our tribal affairs guidelines that go with the State Transportation Commission policy. And then also just highlighting that as tribal liaison, I continue to work with the Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority and the Mackinac Bridge Authority as their tribal liaison. So there's a lot of different interfaces the department has there. And lastly, here for the tribal affairs guidelines, I'd like to send out a special thank you to our colleague, Patsy Hennedy, who works as the director's analyst. And she is a graduate student studying public administration for the University of Michigan Flint. And she was looking for an independent study opportunity in MDOT that gained her experience with administrative policy and procedure. And she's also a proud member of the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians. And so it was really great to have her help me review the guidelines we had from 2019 and how we could update those to be more inclusive and really help with coordination and consultation across the department. So we're in the midst of finalizing those now, and I kind of look forward to having those finalized guidelines for you to review in January if there's interest. But right now we've planned those, we've researched them, we're finalizing the draft, and then we'll be taking that out to all across MDOT, to the regions, TSCs, to get feedback to make sure that we're not missing anything, and then go into finalization here in January, February of '24. So thank you, Patsy, for all your great help on that. So Miigwech is thank you in Anishinabeg, and I would just like to especially thank the 12 tribal governments in the state of Michigan and MDOT's executive leadership for all the support of my position. I could not do that without them, and particularly our staff in the regions and TSCs, because this is 12 nations that you're negotiating and working with would not be able to be done by one person. So, and this is just an interesting photo here. I was able to participate in the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples event in Grand Rapids this year, and is just something to be aware of, as it's a nationwide issue that transportation does play a role in. So was very proud to be a part of that with the governor's office as well. So from the tribal affairs standpoint, that is my update. Are there any questions?
Other questions? I think we would extend our thanks to all the people listed there and to you specifically for all your great work. This is critical in a state with the history we have with our Native American populations and like you say, the 12 nations. That's complex work and well done. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Other comments? Okay. How about the complete streets?
I'm a little nervous about this one, just given Commissioner Schultz's introduction. But
Yeah,
we'll,
she's gunning.
We'll jump right in. And
She's gunning for you, I'll tell you.
I know, and this is not my first experience working with her. I'm very glad to see you here today. And I'm a fellow Grand Rapidian, so I am, very excited to see you here today. So this is very short because I added this in very last minute, so I appreciate the commission allowing me to do that. But we are in the process of updating our complete streets policy within the department, and the director talked a little bit about that earlier. Myself, again, as the strategic alignment and outreach specialist, I have the pleasure of working on many policy-related things within the department, particularly helping administer the M2D2 effort within the department, and now helping to kind of coordinate the complete streets policy update. My counterpart, John Martin, wasn't able to be here today, but he is our context-sensitive solutions and complete streets coordinator out of the Bureau of Development. We're kind of handling everything as much as we can, the two of us, but we could not be doing this without the support of many, many people in the department. I see Carrie's here, Todd's here. There's a bunch of people in the audience who are working with this, and I'm really proud to be presenting it to you today. Why are we talking about this? We had the pleasure of the governor's office and the Michigan Infrastructure Office asking us about this and kind of helping us kick the conversation off. But it is not something that's new. This is something that is a continuing, evolving part of transportation and is a nationwide push, especially coming from FHWA. The hope and the desire coming from FHWA recently is that complete streets design model will become the default approach to projects. That this would be then performing connectivity and comfort and destination, equality to all people who use a street network. So we know that this is the right thing to be doing. How are we doing it? MDOT has a really great foundation to build upon. This is not something new for us. This is something we've been doing for years. We also realize that we can evolve and always do better, so that's what we're talking about here. The Safe Systems Mobility umbrella is what I have coined this, because it's not just the complete streets policy. There are many components of our policy and our foundation that lead into this conversation. So we do have the policies we talked about earlier. We also have our view of trunkline main streets, M2D2, performance-based practical design, and of course our Michigan Mobility 2045 plan that kind of build into this conversation. So who and where? So with the update of this policy, it really aligns well with, as the director highlighted, where we as a department are going. So not only are we talking about updating this policy,
but it fits really well into how we've already updated our mission and vision to be focused on the economy, but also people. And also with the strategic plan update, it really helps us talk about the folks who potentially need this because of systematic underinvestment and those whose needs have not been met through traditional transportation. So there's a lot of work going on internally right now with the department to cover all of these different components, including some of the work that's happening with our national best practice study. Many things are kind of coming together to really fuel the information that will go into this updated policy. So we really hope that the policy will continue to be people-focused and that context will be absolutely critical to what the policy update looks like. Instituting a complete streets policy is both a process and an approach to non-freeway road design. So I want to highlight the fact that this is non-freeway. We do not expect to be putting bike lanes along I-75 or anything crazy like that. That this is going to be our non-freeway road network, and that context is going to be critical. Not every road is going to have every mode of transportation on it. It's just not possible. And so it's really going to be dependent on proper planning and community engagement and working with locals in partnership. And that really is going to require some feedback and interplay with partnerships from local agencies, because we don't have the funding to do all the things that are needed, but we can definitely be there to support those best practices and really involve deeper community engagement from the front end so we know what communities need and when. So what does this look like? It will be an update of the existing policy. It will involve robust public engagement and internal engagement. It will create new corresponding complete streets guidance. Policy is really going to be probably a little bit short, and the hope is that the guidelines will be a lot more robust to guide staff internally. We really hope to upgrade educational documentation internally for our staff to make sure that they understand what's being asked, and create additional outreach and documentation for our external partners and vendors. What this won't do is this one policy will not holistically change unrealistic expectations of the department. We understand that, as the director showed you, that there's a lot that we do, and people expect a lot from us, and we try to show up every day to do our best to accomplish that. But it will also not eliminate conflicting policies and pressures that we have when it comes to complete streets. So how are we doing this? Like I said, we're really being driven by our new mission, vision, and values, as well as our strategic plan update and the national best practice information that we're working on. We have a team, a core policy team of 6 people. We have an internal sponsor group of 12 people, and then we have an internal work group of 17 people, all kind of coming together internally. And then we will be also going out publicly and gaining stakeholder and public engagement on what this draft policy will look like. Timeline, we have a very tight schedule. We are hoping to have a draft policy in front of you all by January, with the hope of having the policy approved in April of '24. So in the next several weeks, we'll be moving into public engagement and stakeholder engagement, as well as concurrently drafting those guidelines and working through the whole process. This is somewhat of a flexible timeline, but this is kind of the goal that we're shooting for. So, and one more thing to answer the question from the commission that was posed to the director, but the conversation around safety. So I believe that complete streets is the tool in one way to accomplish safety. The department always works towards 0 deaths. We really are focusing on the safe systems approach, and I believe the complete streets policy, as well as our context sensitive solutions policy, really plays into the safe systems approach as a component or a tool for us to accomplish that. So I'm really proud of kind of all the areas that we're working on in the department to talk about safe systems approach, vulnerable road users, and all the things that come along with that. Any questions?
Well, thank you very much, Amy. Questions, comments?
Of course I have some.
Commissioner Schultz has numerous comments. Just
I
kidding.
wanted to give others a chance before I said anything. Thank you. So I think one thing that always helps when thinking about completes is to get an idea of how many Michiganders, percent of vulnerable road users there are in Michigan. People who are too young, too old, disabled, poor, can't afford a car, that we are serving from a policy standpoint, because the lens that we look through about cars, and we're the auto state. I think it's very important to understand the percent of people who don't drive or can't drive. And they have to get to the grocery store or the doctor or the church, or they have needs, and how we use transportation as the way they get there is really important. So I think there's a couple policies that are complete streets policies, and states that are doing some things really well, and I don't know which ones you've looked at to benchmark, so I guess that's my first question is, what other states are you looking at?
Many. So particularly Minnesota seems to be a rock star state in a lot of ways, so we've been looking at what Minnesota has been doing. I myself actually participated in an NCHRP study on safety and equity, and that was a nationwide piece of work that we were doing, and we looked at Georgia, we looked at Minnesota, Caltrans, I forget, there's several of them that we are looking towards. I've also done a lot of outreach with Washington State, with Roger Millar and those folks. Obviously his connection with M2D2 and that work. So we're digging really deep into those areas. Smart Growth America actually also has a whole bunch of information on their website about what a complete street policy really looks like, and so we're also using that and seeing how we can retrofit it to meet the needs of Michigan, because it's nice to look at what other states are doing, but as you said, Michigan is its own individual state that has its own individual challenges, and so how do we craft this to meet the needs of our citizens, as well as looking at what others are doing?
So the first request I'd have
Yes.
is if you could include Florida in that list, because they've done excellent work in context and looking at that, as well as Vermont.
Okay.
Vermont, especially from a winter state standpoint. Virginia has some interesting things in their complete streets for access control. And just thinking about how do you, to the highway or to the bridge, we had bridge comments. I noticed in the project list for the bridges, the League of Michigan Bicyclists had provided comments about how do we get across the water if there's not an accommodation. So Virginia has some things in their complete streets policies about that. And then Connecticut, their policy has some very interesting things about kind of objectives and procedures. And I think the challenge in this is how do you operationalize, and I know that's not the role of the commission, but how do you take a policy and have that translate into administrative policies and then have it go into exactly like your slide said, the default.
Correct.
And so how that flows and how the structure for updating the policy goes, I think that's an area that I'm most interested in to set this entire thing up for success.
Absolutely.
And so it would be also helpful, I think, for us to understand how this interrelates with M2D2 and how that connection goes from that policy down to the admin, to the, not dictating what goes in the admin, into your work at the admin level, but I think understanding those components and how those things work together would be helpful for the commission to look at.
We're still trying to figure that out ourselves. To be completely honest, MDOT is a very big department, and context-sensitive solutions and complete streets touches all of us in some way, and so really making sure we're organized with that is a component, but I'm happy to provide updates on that.
And so then the last one is outcomes and measures. And what are the outcomes and measures from a complete streets lens? So level of service is a good example. As the director mentioned, level of service A for cars means a really bad level of service for pedestrians. And in an urban downtown setting, level of service D or E is fine for cars, and it's much better for pedestrians and much safer. So what are those measures of success, or how do we determine what are we designing for and how are we going to measure that at the end of the day if we've done that well? And that can really drive from a design engineer standpoint, like what are we designing for, and what's that target that we're looking at? I mean, everything from lane widths. If the default, everybody, a design engineer comes out, well, the default's 12 foot. That's what we design a lane width for. Well, what if the design width is, the default's 10 foot, and you need a design exception to get to 12? Right? So some of those things that just what's that default, and then what outcome does that produce, I think would be really helpful. And I know I'm starting to get into the weeds where I shouldn't go, but I think those things are really important.
No, and it's critical to understand that, and those are the conversations we're having as a department. It's again, like I said, it's all based in context. So we want to make sure that what we're doing is right for the context. And so instead of being, as our previous two directors said, checkbox engineers, is what really makes sense where, and how do we go about that, and then tracking those metrics so that we can see how successful we've been is going to be critical components. So I hear you loud and clear.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schultz. I thought your initial comments were really good. Having worked on a local issue around complete streets and knowing how all of us that drive vehicles all think that the world revolves around us when we're in our vehicle, it's so hard to get people to think about we need to slow down city streets and so on, because there are people that don't drive big fancy cars like all of us. And it's such a challenging conversation to have with a community when you know the logic behind slowing things down, trimming things down, making them designed for all peoples to be able to use. It's not an easy task. So I think these policies and initiatives are important. It's just once we get them on paper, then the hard work starts.
Exactly. Right.
So, any other comments, concerns? Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. All right, that concludes our fixed agenda. Troy, do we have public comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have one commenter who would like to speak publicly to the commission. That's Mr. Jack Hoffman from Grand Rapids.
My name's Jack Hoffman. I'm an attorney. I'm a board member of the Interurban Transit Partnership for the City of Grand Rapids. I want to congratulate Commissioner Schultz. We worked together on the 2002 Grand Rapids Master Plan with a great team, and we produced a pretty tremendous plan, did we not, Commissioner? Yep, we did. Good times. My purpose here today is to address this Commission's constitutional and statutory duty and power to establish policy for department programs and facilities. The Michigan Constitution states that State Transportation Commission shall establish, and the director shall be responsible for executing policy for department transportation programs and facilities. Likewise, the State Transportation Commission Act states that the powers and duties of the Commission include the establishment of transportation policy for the guidance and direction of the director. Transportation funding reform in Michigan is bogged down. We can't expect the director, the administration, or the legislature to do their part in the governmental process until this commission itself performs its constitutional duty to provide policy leadership. According to department data, meeting the expense of keeping Michigan's highway system in good repair requires expenditures of up to $9.2 billion per year. 99% of this expense is caused by commercial trucks. Last year, commercial trucks paid $600 million in fuel and registration tax, less than 7% of the damage caused. On the asset management side, considering all sources of transportation income, state, federal, and local, Michigan needs to generate an additional $4.2 billion a year just to keep pavement and bridges in good repair. It's not possible to raise the needed revenue by a fuel tax, but it is possible to do so through user fees. For example, Illinois raises $1.2 billion per year on mileage and weight-based user fees on heavy commercial trucks. The mileage is logged by the federal electronic logging system and paid through the International Registration Plan. To tell the truth, mileage-based user fees are the only possible way for the revenue to be raised, and for that reason are inevitable sooner or later. I propose that this commission request the director to prepare a report and recommendations on establishing commission policy for user fee programs for use of state highway facilities, and that upon receipt of the report, the commission hold a planning retreat looking forward to the adoption of a user fee policy by the commission. To paraphrase Abraham Lincoln, my fellow citizens, we cannot escape the Constitution of the state of Michigan. The road to transportation funding reform begins here with this commission and nowhere else. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer or come back as an agenda item. I have a 10-minute program. You got the 3 minutes. You get three times the insights for no additional cost.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Unless you
Hoffman.
have
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. We appreciate your suggestion. We'll take it under advisement. It's always a tension point between us and the legislature as to funding questions, but we appreciate.
If I could come back, I can address that issue. Can I just say one thing?
Sure.
You'll ask your attorney. You have an attorney general working for you.
Yes.
Ask her if this commission has the authority to implement user fees without additional legislative authority. I know this commission can't do taxes, but ask your attorney, can we do a user fee program like they do in Illinois without additional authority? Just thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. That's all right. Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. It's always good to end with a provocative note.
That's my specialty.
Very well. You do it well. Okay. Any other comments, concerns to come before the commission today? If not, we will stand adjourned until our next meeting on January 25th, location to be determined. We may even have a discussion, may poll the commission now that we're at full membership about time. So be thinking about that as to what time we meet. That's moved back and forth over the years. So, okay, very good. With that, we stand adjourned.